Hello, and welcome back to the Reading Foundations course. Today we will work through module number 3. Many of you may be familiar with the Weight Watchers organization. Watch this quick ad and think to yourself, how is Weight Watchers like teaching? I know that the Weight Watchers organization focuses on weight loss, but in my mind, they're effective teachers. What does Weight Watchers do right? Well, they use the principles of workshop teaching. First, although everyone shares the goal of losing weight, each individual sets his or her own specific targets. Secondly, Weight Watchers collects ongoing data. They ask you to weigh in each week. Weight Watchers also gives you explicit directions on how to lose weight. They tell you what to eat, in what quantities, and how much to exercise. Another effective workshop principle that Weight Watchers uses is that they give you choices. You can choose how to participate and what exactly to eat. And they celebrate your success as you learn how to lose and maintain a healthy weight. Now that you think about it, doesn't Weight Watchers do a lot of the things we do as good teachers? So today I want to teach you that just like Weight Watchers does, reading teachers need to collect data and use it to drive instruction. We can do this by conducting running records, comprehension checks, and by observing students. So, what is a running record? A running record is a reading assessment in which reading teachers listen to a student actually read text and they mark off what students are doing correctly as well as they record errors. Teachers can use this assessment to know what decoding strategies students are using, listen for their fluency, determine if students are correcting their own errors, and teachers can gather a comprehension check. Although there are some well-known marks that teachers often use during running record assessments, you can use whatever system works for you. Most teachers code with a check for correct words and write in the miscues. Here is the process for conducting a running record. You start with a level text that you deem appropriate for your student. Then you listen to them read and mark your text using your code. Next, you ask students to retell the text and record their response. And finally, you ask students some comprehension questions and you record their response to those questions as well. Watch these videos to get a better idea of what running records look like. Now that you know how to give a running record, let's take a moment to think about why we give this type of assessment. Have you heard of Vygotsky's theory of the zone of proximal development? This is the theory that all people have a sweet spot in learning, and that is a zone in which learning is not too easy and not too hard. We want students to work for their learning, but we don't want them to work so hard that they get frustrated. This theory serves as the foundation for putting students in just right books. And running records help reading teachers to determine what level of text is just right for each individual student. We also teach students two simple ways to put themselves into just right books. One is the Goldilocks way, which is to have students think about whether a book is too easy, too hard, or just right. And the other way is the 5-finger rule. For this method, we teach students to hold up 5 fingers and start reading. Each time they encounter a tricky word, they're prompted to put 1 finger down. And if all fingers are down by the end of the book, or the end of the page, depending on the length of the book, then it's too hard for them to read independently. And if we're going to put students into just right books, then we need a leveled library to provide them with a variety of texts on their level. Please take a minute to respond to our discussion board. Do you have a leveled library in your classroom? If so, how did readers use it? And if not, how could you develop a leveled library? Another thing to use running records for is for the reading teachers to conduct a miscue analysis so they can better understand what errors students are making in an effort to help them learn. Reading teachers look for 3 types of errors: meaning-based errors, syntax errors, and visual errors. Take a minute to look at this chart to see what teachers could do once they determine a student's errors. If a student is making a visual error, a teacher could prompt them by asking, "Does that look right?" For example, if the text says, "It might be a stray," Henry said, petting it. "It has to be," says Henry's father. "That is the shabbiest cat I've ever seen." But the child reads, "That is the dirtiest cat I have ever seen." The teacher could ask, "Does that look right?" Check out that first letter and think of the sound it makes. If a student makes a syntax error, the teacher could prompt, "Does that sound right?" For example, if the text says, "He carried the cat into the house while Henry and Mudge followed. Mudge's tail was wagging hard." But the student reads, "He carried the cat into the house while Henry and Mudge followed." The teacher could say, "Does that sound right? Let me reread what you just said and listen to how that sounds." And if the student makes a meaning-based error, the teacher could prompt, "Does that make sense?" For example, if the text says, "I hoped I was running towards our house. The sun had begun to set and the darkness seemed to be coming to meet me. Mom and Dad and I had often walked here in the summer, but now everything that was familiar was covered with snow. I wasn't sure where I was. Silver was growing heavy." But the student reads, "I hopped I was running towards the house." The teacher could ask, "Does that make sense? Make a movie in your mind to see if that makes sense." As a reading teacher, keep these 3 prompts in your mind every time you read with students. Does that look right? Sound right? Make sense? Running records are not the only way to assess students on their reading. Another assessment reading teachers use is to observe students while they're reading. On Blackboard, I provided a list of reading skills and how we might observe for them. For example, if we're thinking about fluency, we could observe a student and think, are they phrasing their words? And are they using the punctuation? These observations will give us information about our readers and help us to think of teaching points to address their specific needs. Here's your next assignment. Look over the Observing Reading Behaviors document. Spend 15 minutes observing a student reading. Ask yourself the questions provided on the document. Then write a reflection on what you learned about your reader and how you might help him or her develop effective reading behaviors. And there's one more way we can gather data on our students as readers. Anytime a student is writing about reading, whether on sticky notes or in a reading notebook or in an essay, their writing can provide us with ideas about their reading strengths and needs. Try this. Conduct a read aloud with your students. Throughout the book, stop and ask students to jot about these prompts. Then use this rubric to determine your students' strengths and needs. Your last assignment for this module is to use a rubric to assess a piece of student writing. You can use the one provided on Blackboard, or you can use your own rubric. What did you learn about your reader? What are their strengths? What are their needs? Well, that was a lot of learning. Here are the assignments due by next module. Watch the videos and engage in the discussion threads. Also, please observe a reader and reflect on his or her strengths and needs, and also assess a reader based on their writing about reading. Finally, please read Growing Readers, pages 44 through 63. And I hope everyone has started researching for their inquiry papers. See you all next time.